All right, time now to talk about Jeonbuk versus Daejeon. That's coming up this Friday at 4:30 Korea time. It's a national holiday in Korea, the Korea Independence Movement Day, hence the early kickoff for a weekday. But the season in general, Matthew, has come around quite quickly. Are we feeling ready for the new season?
Uh, I think so. I think having the Asian Cup has definitely taken my mind off it a little bit, and with the Asian Cup ending and what was like 2 weeks of, well, I don't know, it's still ongoing, isn't it? But 2 weeks of all that fallout and that, it seems like all the K League stuff kind of just went a bit under the radar. Then suddenly, bam, it's back, and
Yeah.
I think the Jesse Lingard transfer actually has probably really kind of reignited the interest because that kind of happened like very recently, didn't it? So I think that's kind of like re um, whetted the appetite, I think, for K League. So yeah, it is later kickoff than usual, but feels a lot sooner for some reason.
Yeah, it does. I think I'm glad that it's a March 1st or early March start to the
Mhm.
season because I didn't like those mid or even late February starts that we had for the last couple of years. And then there was a day or two last week, I think it was, where it felt like spring and it was like 18 degrees, and then
Yeah,
up in Seoul, and it felt like, oh, spring's here, Kaylee's coming soon. And then so I was feeling ready then, but then now we've gone back to snow and sleet, and it's pretty cold. I don't know. I just hope I haven't looked at the weather forecast for Jeonju this
no,
Friday, but I'm hoping it's at least not freezing. But
yeah,
I'm ready. I'm ready. I
yeah.
think.
I think it'd be good to actually get some club football back on the go again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It seems forever since last time I went down there.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been to Jeonju in since we went 2019. That Suwon
Yeah,
Bruins game.
I think it was a win for
September
John Buck,
29th.
wasn't it? I can't remember. They didn't lose.
It was 2-0, I think. Yeah. Was it
Yeah, it feels
3?
like it feels like a 2-0 that one. But
Yeah. Well, I suppose the first thing we should really talk about is our reactions or initial thoughts on our teams getting this fixture to start the season.
mhm, yeah, I and now this is no offense to you, Paul. I am underwhelmed because now bear with me. This is the first time I've watched John Buck. Oh no, technically the second, not technically. Sorry, that's to me technically the second time I've watched John Buck when they've not been the FA Cup holder or the league winner. I did watch them in 2017 when they versed Jeonnam Dragons um, after they lost the league title, partly through a points deduction as well. So, but that was a Honam derby, so there was a bit of needle in this. I know Daejeon and Jeonju, it's an hour away. I never really felt there was that much needle between this match, so despite like the proximity. But yeah, so for me, it's like I said, oh woe is me, but it's like I'm used to seeing a trophy when John Buck come out that tunnel. Although I had to watch it last year with Ulsan. But yeah, so no, forgive me, Paul, but I am excited because I was like, well, Paul, you and I actually don't watch games where we've both got a team on either side. Ryan and I have watched a few uh, Honam derbies between Jeonnam when they were still in the top flight, but we've never actually watched a John Book Daejeon game. So there is a bit of excitement in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't underwhelmed, but I was
Hmm.
hoping for either a home fixture, obviously,
Hmm.
or if it's an away game, it's a ground where I haven't been before.
Yeah.
So because it's a tough game against a big team away from home, it's like, oh, okay, this is tough. This is a very, very, very tough start to the season. And because, as we talked about in the season preview pod, I
Hmm.
talked about how I thought John Book have done the best business in the transfer window. This is probably the strongest squad in the division that
Yeah.
we're going to have to face here. So I don't think it doesn't get. I don't think even with Ulsan being the reigning champions for the last 2 years, I don't think it really gets any tougher than John Book away.
Well, I mean, for me, it's you never really want the toughest club first game of the season. For me, it was always like, you never wanted United or Liverpool on the opening day. When back in the day, you want them like give yourself a month to get the players settled before you have those games. But I mean, obviously from a Jeonbuk perspective, to me it's just I don't really want Ulsan first day of the season, but it's always been that kind of fixture because it's always tended to be an FA Cup winner. But yeah, I mean, Daejeon's a tricky fixture. It's not an easy one by any stretch because Daejeon have also done an incredible amount of business, and I think we're both going to be complimenting each other's teams here. But it is actually, when you really think about it, this is actually a pretty good fixture. It's really local. Fans can get to it, so it should be a good turnout. Jeonbuk are revitalized and bought a lot of players in, but Daejeon as well are a team that's just improving year upon year and have done really a good bit of business. So it's actually quite a good fixture, but I think we both have different expectations of what it should be.
Yeah, it's a good fixture, and it's almost a shame that it is on the same day as the East Coast Derby, because the East Coast Derby is the one where it's been picked for overseas broadcasting and English commentary, whereas this game is probably the second biggest, the second sort of like most sort of enticing game. The other game that's been picked is Gwangju Seoul, which I don't really think is. I think they were maybe hoping that Lingard might make his debut there, but I think really the Jeonbuk Daejeon game is the second best game, the second most sort of, in terms of the two teams going at each other. This is probably the second best game of the weekend. So it's a shame that it's on a Friday, but yeah, I mean, Jeonju to Daejeon, an hour or so. It should be a good crowd and good atmosphere. I just hope it's not as tough as I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah, no, exactly. It'll be interesting. But yeah, either way, should be a good game.
Should be. Well, Jeonbuk have played already this season. They played two matches, of course, in the ACL round of 16. What did we learn from those two games? Have there been any noticeable differences in terms of tactics from Dan Petrescu?
Yeah, simpler. But what I liked from the recent games, and I think we also saw it with against Bangkok United as well, just before Christmas in the Champions League. It's just a simple 4-4-2. Okay, there was a slight variation against Pohang, probably more like a 4-3-3, but it's just more direct, more forward passes. There's more tackles. There's more aerial duels. They're all succeeding possession. And we learned with Dan Petrescu's side, if you look through his last 5, 6, 7 results in K-League, every time Jeonbuk ceded possession, they usually won the game. It was every time they had the ball is when they lost or dropped points. And I think they've kind of gone back almost to that 2016 kind of mentality, defend from the front, get the ball back and just be direct with it and just be not afraid to take a shot. The number of shots have gone up. I mean, the last K-League game against Ulsan, yes, sure, it was Ulsan. Jeonbuk didn't have a shot on target in that final game of the season. And to kind of see them now getting more shots away, and they are having more fouls. They are getting stuck in a bit more. But that Pohang game, Pohang is a difficult team. That's a difficult way to start your season with a round of 16 match against. Yeah, sure, Pohang's had some changes, but the nucleus of that team is still there. And they had they had a difficult game in Jeonju and then go into the Steel Yard and get in the draw. Fantastic. And I think it's just, I don't want to, it just feels like it's back to basics a little bit more. And obviously the talent of the players as well is going to help a lot in that sense, but they've been given more freedom to do something rather than there seems to be a bit of anxiousness before on what they should be doing. Well, should I be passing it forward? Should I be passing it sideways? Now it just seems like, oh, go on, get it sorted kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I think I'm very much oversimplifying it here. I'm just really kind of going off stats and what I saw, but it's also such a very small sample. But I do think they are going to employ something very similar, which we'll get onto in a bit. But I mean, what do you think of like Daejeon? How are they going to? Because you've had a lot of signings and you haven't had the the Champions League games to kind of get a bit of a prediction. Obviously, though, Daejeon did put their friendlies on YouTube. I know you watched a couple of them. What kind of systems are you seeing being employed?
Yeah, it's funny. I think K-League managers can be quite guarded and keep their cards close to their chest. So having these ACL games for Jeonbuk, Pohang and Ulsan before the season, it's kind of they're revealing their hand probably, and it's kind of similar, like you just said, with Daejeon having those friendlies, the ones in Vietnam on YouTube. It kind of perhaps forced the manager to sort of say, "Oh yeah, we are looking at changing to a back four," because that became quite obvious. They were playing with a back four, which was quite unusual. Because when they played the back four last season, even the season before, it's like this is uncomfortable. They just never looked comfortable in a four. And that was the plan. They were going to sort of change. The manager's spoken about how he wants to put aside the counter-attacking style from last year. And, if you want to be a real force in this league and progress in the way that they want to sort of playing out from the back and possession-based football. Now, all this was done with Choi Min in mind as being at the heart of the defense. He was given the captaincy again after he gave it up the last year, but then he left all of a sudden. And it's not just the fact that he's a good centre back. He's so good at bringing the ball out. He's as we saw earlier in his career, he was more of an attacking midfield player, and even at university, he was a striker. So you kind of see that passing ability and his technique. It comes to the fore when he was playing as a sort of real ball-playing centre-back. So him gone is a huge loss. Now, they have brought in Lee Sun-min, who obviously is a midfield player, but he will bring a little bit of the missing aggression that Choi Min, his absence has sort of left. But in terms of the formation and the style, I think they've said now, the manager said that they are having to sort of think about it again a little bit because they don't really have somebody else to play in that same place or in the same way that Choi Min did. So they might go back to a back three. And this fixture, as we'll get to probably a bit later, this fixture is a kind of one where you might have to just be very tight. So I think the formation and the tactics that we see in this first game might not necessarily be how he approaches the season in general. He might have to sort of buy himself a little bit more time and go back to what they were doing last season and play a back three with wing backs. So yeah, Choi Min leaving it was just really awful timing, really leaving 2 weeks before the start of the season. So they were thinking about changing the way that they play, but last year they just were so effective on the counter. It's a kind of a shame, really, because I do like that counter-attacking style. There's nothing more exciting when you see a team break on the counter and they just, they win the ball back and they pick out, in like 2 or 3 very sort of sharp passes forward and they score. I've always quite liked watching that, and they had quite a lot of pacey players last year. And they also had Thiago to go along with if it didn't work. Obviously he's gone now. So yeah, changing formation, changing sort of approach completely has me a little bit worried.
I think there's always been like a swap in approaches, to be honest. I think Jeonbuk are probably actually more going to be playing like Daejeon were last season, and Daejeon might be well, now they've not got Thiago. He's turning up for the other team. I think with a bit more possession, it seems a bit of a switch, but it'll be interesting to see who can pull it off better.
But it is a big season for both these teams. Now, please forgive the comparison to Manchester United with Jeonbuk, but Jeonbuk became, Jeonbuk became a bit of a dynasty, right? They're like the New York Yankees or like the Manchester United for the best part of a decade. But then 2 years without winning the league. They are probably where Man United were in 2015, 2016, where they're facing a pivotal point, perhaps in their history, where if they don't get back on track and get back in amongst it for the title, they could get left behind by other teams with Seoul strengthening and we see Gwangju coming out of nowhere, and obviously we're going to probably see Pohang. We'll see how it works out with Pohang, but there is that risk, isn't it? Does it feel like that? It's like it's been 2 years now that this has not happened before.
I think the biggest problem is Ulsan, which sounds very obvious, but um they still have a strong team this season, and I think that they once they managed to get over that hurdle. I know it was kind of oversimplifying things a bit because it was like a project that was built on season upon season, whereas I think Jeonbuk was a team that had kind of began to deal in complacency a little bit. Um, but I still think it's only Ulsan, you see, because with Pohang, well, obviously we know that they've had a bit of an overhaul in the winter, but um, Pohang never really have the funds. They've just had a very good manager the last couple of years, and it's going to be very difficult to get that same level um, where budget is cut every year or best players are sold every year and still maintain those results. They were very much. It was very much last year for them. If they were going to do anything, it was very much last year, and they did. They won the cup, which they shouldn't be disappointed with. And given the resources that were spent, Jeonbuk will always be uh, up there given the gulf in finance. Last year was a blip, but I don't think they're going to be left behind by any stretch. I think Ulsan have got problems longer term at the moment with perhaps they're not bringing through enough youth players, but I also think that's very quickly rectifiable as well. I can kind of see what they're going for here just to kind of win. So, kind of getting away from your question, but I think like we've seen teams challenge and then fall away. Like it's very difficult to sustain that. And Jeonbuk did finish fourth last season, but it'd be very, very shocking if they ever drop down to fourth again in the next however many years. I think they'll be back up in the top three, top two, and probably the top one. So yeah, it's not kind of like that because the Premier League has obviously got so many teams that can mount a challenge. I think the biggest problem for Jeonbuk is their aura was kind of lifted last season. Everybody felt that they could get 3 points in Jeonju. I think if they can rectify that quickly and with the signings they've made, I think if they can rectify that and instill that kind of fear back into opponents, then I don't think there's a risk of a dynasty or being lost or anything like that. But yeah, Ulsan is still the biggest issue. They've got to stop Ulsan from kind of breaking into their records. Ulsan are a bit far off, obviously, because they've only got 4 trophies and Jeonbuk's got 9. But it's you remember the teams that are winning recently, and if Ulsan are still favourites probably for this title. Well, yeah, that's what I think about Jeonbuk anyway. But I should probably ask you about like Daejeon because obviously they've come up, they've done well last season, but teams that come up and do well, do have there is a track record of those kind of teams going straight back down in their second season in Korea. So how about that for Daejeon? Is there any fears that last year was a flash in the pan? I know they have a really decent budget as well.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to be in danger of relegation. But there is that greed now in a good way from
Hmm.
the supporters in that we want more now, and
Hmm.
the target is to qualify for the AFC Champions League. Now, whether that's ACL2 or ACLE, obviously it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, having getting into Asia will be a superb achievement, but I think because they've said that this is what the target is, and they've been quite open, the club and the manager, with just
Hmm.
sort of how ambitious that they are, we should be all right. But there is always the thing is every manager in any team in any league around the world, they will always feel probably that their team has prepared enough. No
Hmm.
manager, I don't think, will ever head into a season thinking, "Oh, we're going to get relegated here," or "We're going to be, we're up against it." You will, and also fans, you sort of have that faith, thinking whoever's in charge, the manager, and whoever is, organizing the preseason and whatever it is, you sort of place your trust in them to think, well, they've done as best as they can. The team is as prepared as it can be. But you don't know until the season starts. You don't know until that
Hmm.
first game begins, until the players cross that white line. It could go either way, Like go back to a year ago and that game against Gangwon, that first 45 minutes when Daejeon were electric because they were riding the adrenaline of for back in K League One. If we lost that game, I mean, who knows how the season would have turned out? So I don't think it's. I think finishing eighth last year was kind of good because it means that we don't have to do that much to beat it. I think for me, just incremental progress is fine. There's no rush. There's no time limit on the ACL or time limit on winning the league. Just if we finish in the top six and finish sixth this year, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
And then maybe next year we can go for the Champions League because it's, the risk is you go up very quickly, but you fall down very quickly as well because, if there's no long-term plan and no long-term strategy, then these kind of things can happen. So I'm not worried about it being a difficult long season because I think we have recruited very, very well. And I do think the manager is very good. But just there's just that little seed of doubt in my mind is because of the way that they've changed the way they play. Have the players have the time to adapt to this new system? And whatever magic was there last year, and we've lost quite a lot of players from last year as well. We've lost quite a lot of players. All our goals from last year have gone. Thiago.
Yeah, I was going to say,
massive.
yeah. Are you worried about facing Thiago?
Yeah, I am worried about facing Thiago because it's just written in the stars. Because there's similarities to the Kevin Norris situation in 2012, 2013. Because he was Daejeon's top scorer in 2012, and in that season, I think he scored 16 goals, and that set the club record for top flight goals by a single player. Thiago last year beat that 17. Both players then moved to Jeonbuk the season after. Kevin Norris scored against Daejeon in that first game of the season, I think. So I think he'll score. I think Thiago will score against Daejeon this on Friday. I am worried about facing him, yeah. But speaking of Brazilians who played with each other, Thiago obviously played with Hernandez, who Jeonbuk have just signed when they're both at Gyeongnam. Now he obviously pulled up with an injury in that. Was it the first leg against Pohang against the ACL?
Yeah, he injured himself while shooting, which is good to hear that he's at least getting shots in. But yeah, he wasn't fit for the second leg of the Champions League with Pohang. But there's actually, at the time of recording, no reports of it being long term. It just wasn't going to be fit for the second leg. So there is a chance he should be back for this match. I'm sure he's going to be asked about it actually on the media day, though, Dan Petrescu. So, for those wanting to try and timestamp this conversation, you can work it out for yourselves. I would say be cautiously optimistic that he's going to feature, or cautiously pessimistic, or whatever you want. However, he's probably going to feature in some capacity until officially stated to the contrary. But if he isn't, then it's probably going to be An Hyun-bom moved up to left wing. We saw this in the second leg. And that's not a bad move. An's had good displays there. But yeah, Hernandez is who the fans will be wanting to see. Those who missed the Champions League match but saw it on TV, saw the highlights. Yeah. They know what he can cause, and the partnership there with Thiago, the sparks are still there. You could see it in the first leg in that first half. So that's what the fans want to see, I think. So hopefully, but I guess there is a chance he might be from the bench. I'm banking on him starting, but
fair enough. Well,
it'll depend.
If he is fit, Jeonbuk have more foreign players than they can actually field all at the same time. Yeah. Even with Petrosek, who's apparently out of favour. If all are fit and whatever, who would you say is the foreigner that misses out? Who are the ones that start and who are the ones that has to sit on the bench?
I think that, again, I don't want to keep leaning on the Pohang fixtures as gospel, because there were players injured, there were players not fit, and it's it's just a couple of games. That formation may have well been the best to get past Pohang, but I think Hernandez and Thiago are definitely going to start when they're fit. Nana Boateng, he was the usual starter in central midfield, but you look at who was starting against Pohang, Isubin and Eong Jae, and you think, well, they aren't bad, So I'm thinking, well, Nana Boateng will probably start unless he wants to play another foreigner, and that other foreigner might be Marcus Vinicius, who has been signed. He's scored 13 goals in 37 appearances last season for Atletico Huila in Colombia. Again, coming to a league is very difficult. He's the one with the biggest question mark over him. Is he a good signing? Is he going to struggle to fit in? If he turns out to be a really strong signing, then suddenly you're looking at like Nana Boateng's not going to be starting because there are plenty of central midfield options to replace him. Whereas I don't think there are that many options up front. So you're probably going to see Vinicius is definitely going to start getting a chance. He hasn't featured yet. He's been on the bench twice against Pohang. Didn't come off the bench. He may not be match sharp. Yeah, it may not be match fit. But judging, Jeonbuk always tend to give debuts to as many people as they can on the opening day. Because I genuinely have been to so many opening days, it feels like I can say with experience they do try to squeeze them all in at some capacity. So I am expecting these players to actually make an appearance on match day one, even if they weren't there in the Champions League. So I guess we're going to kind of see from that. But at the moment, Hernandez, Thiago, and then it's going to be between Marcus Vinicius or Nana Boateng long term. Petrusek, he seems to be playing with the B team a lot, which is a bit odd in the sense that you don't normally see the foreign players dropping down to the B team that often. But there's just too much competition, I think, at centre back, and if you're not meeting the standards, then you're going to be dropped. I think I'd like to think that he probably can get back in as well because he has plenty of promise. He's a decent player, so yeah, we'll see. Lots of talent to. It's what a lovely problem to have.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of similar with Daejeon because they've got too many foreigners as well in terms of too many that can actually start a game.
I was going to say, let's just cut that there. Let's hope nobody takes that out of context.
Yes, you got too many bloody foreigners coming in and taking our jobs, though. So
You're saying
it's
it,
similar
not me.
actually. The Vinicius situation is kind of similar with Farley Rosa, who we've just signed, and he's not been with the team that long. So I think it'll probably be a while before he gets a chance to start. But I think Leandro will miss out anyway. I think he'll be the one who has to sort of come off the bench, perhaps. But actually, Lee Chang-gun, the goalkeeper, is a doubt. He actually had to return from pre-season camp. I think it was when they were in Vietnam to receive treatment, and he's kind of had to sort of train on his own a little bit. So he's a doubt, and it's like with a week to go to the season, it could be a smokescreen, and he's going to be fine. But I'd be very worried because he was probably the team's best player last year. Saved them so many times, if you pardon the pun. But Hong Jong-un, the centre back, he's just signed. He's also I would say a slight doubt. He had a bit of treatment on an injury. Again, came back to Daejeon to sort of get that worked on. There'll be debuts for Lee Sun-min, even though he was away with the Asian Cup, with the Korea squad in the Asian Cup. Didn't play at all, so he's perhaps not match fit, but he's a new captain, so they have to play him really. I think Aaron Carver will probably start as well. Kim Sung-dae is a certainty to start. And then Park Jin-song, obviously the ex-Jeonbuk left back. Rosa might come off the bench, but I suppose in that case, then with all these sort of team news talk, what sort of lineup are you expecting from Jeonbuk, and also what's your score prediction for this game?
I'm going to say let's just use the same as the first leg against Pohang as the template, but we're going to have to fit a U22 player in here. So we're going to go Kim Jong-hun in goal, Kim Jin-soo, Park Jin-seop, Hong Dong-ho, Kim Tae-wan across the back line. I see that staying the same. Kim Tae-wan did have a few injury doubts, but then he was back for the second leg. He's just exhausted, it looks like, after Klinsmann has run them into the ground. But Hernandez, I think he's going to be ready to start. So I'm just going to gamble with him there. If not, it'll be An Hyun-bum. But Isu Bin, Young Jae, and then it's going to be Lee Dong-jun later. But because of the under-22 rule, I would bank on E.G. Hun starting there on the right. But he can also play on the left as well, so he could fit into for Hernandez if Hernandez isn't fit. Up top, Son Min-kyu and Thiago. I guess if they really want to get the 2 under-22s out the way early, Son Min-kyu could be on the bench for Daejeon Ho, no, not that one, but yeah, he's also an under-22 player. So I think that's gonna be the shape. I think it's gonna be 2-0 to Jeonbuk. I think it's just gonna be another solid performance. I mean, it wasn't that good against Pohang, but it was good. It was better than we had seen Jeonbuk in a while. There was still plenty of flaws. They did look a little bit unassured sometimes in the centre of the park, even though I complimented those players. New players finding their feet, Young Jae finding his role in the squad. But I do think it's going to be comfortable for Jeonbuk.
Fair enough.
How about you?
Well, in terms of formation, I think he'll go with this first game. I think he'll go for a 5-3-2. I think it would be well. Depends who's fit for the goalkeeper position, but Lee Chang-gun, if he is fit, then him. If not, it'll be Lee Jun-so, who is very good, and he must wonder when he's going to get his chance because he's been at the club for a while now. He's not even young anymore. He's like 25, but he's a very good goalkeeper. So one of those two. A back five with Kang Yun-song at right back, Aaron Carver and Anton in the middle. And I think Im Dok-gun will be the person who gets the nod for that third centre-back spot. The manager, he trusts him. Kim Hyun-woo, I'm not sure that he's convinced with him. So that'll be that. And I think Park Jin-song will probably play at left wing back and start the game against his former club. In midfield, it'll be Lee Sun-min and Ju Se-jong, and I reckon if he starts with an under-22 player, it'll be Lee Dong-won. If not, it'll probably be Lee Hyun-sik because he puts a shift in. And up front, Kim Sung-dae is probably just behind the main striker, and then Gutek as the main striker. Score prediction, I'm not feeling confident. I think a Jeonbuk win, maybe 2-1. I would be delighted with a draw in this game. So I guess we'll see.
Indeed. I guess we will. And we'll see you on Friday.
I'll see you Friday.
Yeah, we'll see you on Friday. Kickoff 4:30 p.m. Although, Paul, I think we've got to meet a little bit earlier to get the train.
Might have to.
So
yeah.
I'll meet at the station.
See you at Seoul Station.
All right. Well, Yongsan. It's Yongsan. Get it right.
Oh, Yongsan. Bloody hell.
Yeah. I'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit. Cheers.